No, the title is not clickbait. I built an app with AI in 5 days and it's on the App Store right now. I've been building AI products and consulting for government bodies and multinational companies since ChatGPT came out. And in this video, I'm going to show you what I built, how I built it, how much it cost, and how you can go from idea to full-fledged application. Let's go. So the app is called Habit Buddies. It's a social habit tracking application. So you can track your personal habits by yourself, but you can also create groups, invite friends and family, and then track habits together. And the idea is to motivate each other and encourage building good habits. You can also gamify the experience, so you can add points to habits, and there are leaderboards in groups, so you can see who's being the most consistent, and there's sort of a bit of friendly competition. I got this idea after my wife actually asked me if there was a way for her and her friends to see how often they were going training, and so they could start like motivating each other. And since then, I built a few dummy prototypes that didn't work really well. And soon after, I started traveling. So we've been traveling for over 2 months now. And it turns out it's really hard to stay consistent with your habits while you're traveling. And so I then built this application properly, and I'm now currently using it myself. So I built this app with Replit. Replit is a website, or it's a web app where you can write code online. So Replit has their own AI agent, so that's Replit Agent, that essentially builds applications for you. I used Replit Agent to build this entire application. In total, roughly, I will say that it cost me about 200 Australian dollars. So that's about, I think, 150 US. And so Replit's agent, the way that it works is that you pay per usage. So the more messages you send it and the more code that it writes, you pay for that essentially. And so in total, it cost me about 200 Australian dollars. That doesn't include paying for Replit's monthly subscription. So I use Replit for all my projects. So that's both client projects as well as personal projects. So I already pay for their $20 a month subscription. If you want to host your project on Replit and deploy it to the internet through Replit, you will have to pay that $20 a month. Besides those two, the only other thing that I paid for was the Apple developer account, which you need to put an app on the actual iOS App Store. That's $99 US a month. Oh, sorry, not a month. That's $99 US. I'm not sure if it's a one-time fee or if it's a yearly fee, but that's about 150 Australian. That's all the cost that was related to building this application. So that's the Replit agent usage, Replit core, which is $20 a month, and the $99 US Apple developer account. Quick note, this video is really long and it contains a lot of information. If you want to go straight to learning how you can build an app yourself, skip to this time. And don't forget, you can use the chapters down below. Enjoy. Now, we need to talk about mobile applications briefly before I get into how I built it and how you can build it. There are 3 different types of mobile applications, generally speaking, this sort of high level. The first type is a progressive web application. So that's a PWA. What that means is you basically build a website, and that website has some sort of functionality, right? So you can do things on it, it's basically a web app essentially. And you package that up and you put that onto, let's say, the App Store. And so when somebody downloads the app, that app is actually pointing to a website, like an actual web application. It just looks like a mobile application. And so really what a PWA is, it's a website or a web app that's really well optimized for mobile. And a lot of apps that you might actually use on a daily basis are probably PWAs. They're websites that are really well optimized for mobile. Habit Buddies is a PWA. And I'll talk a lot more about the advantages and disadvantages of building a PWA and how I also rebuilt the entire Habit Buddies application as a different type of application towards the end of the video. The second type of mobile applications are native applications. And so, as for example, Apple released a programming language called Swift, and you can build iOS applications with Swift. But what makes Swift interesting is that when you build an app with Swift, you can only use that app on iOS. You can't, for example, build an app in Swift and then try and use that in an Android. That doesn't work. That's what makes it a native application. That's the second type of application. So if I, for example, built Habit Buddies in Swift, I could only put that onto the iOS App Store. And if I wanted to then put it onto the Android App Store, I would have to then rebuild that entire application in a different programming language that is made specifically for Android. The third type of application is a hybrid application. And what that means is there are certain programming languages where you can write or build the application with this programming language, and you can then use that for both iOS and Android. And that sounds really good, but there is nuance and there are trade-offs for all three of these applications. I'll talk a bit more about, again, the trade-off between the hybrid as well as the PWA. I built Habit Buddies as a PWA just because it's relatively simple. It's not a very complicated application, and I'm not really planning for this to be a massive app. I do think the idea is really nice. I think it's very useful. I use it myself personally every single day, and it's really helped me actually, but I'll talk a bit more about that later on. Now, let's say you want to start building an application. How do you get started? So let's say you're going to Replit and you're going to use Replit Agent, because that's what I did. The beginning of your building journey, like the first prompt as well as the first few after that, this is the most important part. So when it comes to your first prompt, there are two ways you can go about doing this, right? So let's say you have this grand idea. So in this video, I'll talk as if I'm building Habit Buddies, right? So I have this grand idea to build this app called Habit Buddies. Do I, for example, in the first prompt, do I tell the agent, I'm gonna build this app and it's gonna do all these things, right? It's gonna do like these 10 different things. Or do I just tell it, hey, let's just build a very basic version and this is like one thing that you should do. Now, I don't think there is much of a difference between starting with small details versus compared to like giving it like a ton of detail. That's not that important. However, I do think it's a good idea to give the agent a lot of context. So in this case, I would recommend breaking down at least to some level or to some degree your general idea. Like I want to build a social habit tracking application. The idea is that a user can track their habits so they can create habits and track them. And in terms of the social aspect, the idea is that eventually they'll be able to create groups. They can invite people into their groups, they can track habits together, and there'll be leaderboards, right? That's enough context. You don't have to go into like extreme detail and list down every single feature, but you also shouldn't just sort of give it like a one-liner, right? This is some context, but not too much. This is important, but what's really important is what you write after this. This is not the end of your prompt. The real important part of your first prompt is to make sure that you tell the agent to build the most bare bones basic functionality. For Habit Buddies, for example, the idea is you would tell it, so give it all the context, so this is the application that I'm building, so on and so forth, and then you would say, for now, step one, let's build the most basic functionality where a user can create a habit and then just press a button to log that they've completed it, or press the button to undo that feature or that habit, and that's it. That's the most bare bones function that can possibly be built, right? And that's how you want to get started. You give the context of what you want to build eventually, but then you tell the agent, just build this one thing first. This is really important. The reason why this is important is because once the agent starts building, if you start accruing bugs and issues, right, it becomes really difficult to manage the application. So it's really important that when you start the initial feature, okay, it works fine, cool, and then you slowly build on top of that one thing at a time. So let's say the first thing you did was, okay, you can create a habit and you can press a button and you can log that you've done it. Beautiful. Can you create multiple habits? That also works. Fantastic. Next, what do you want to do? Create a feature where you can then see the history of your habit. Okay, fantastic. And then it does that. So one thing at a time. It's really important that you do this one thing at a time. Now, you might notice that these are all related to one function, habits, right? So creating one habit or creating multiple habits or editing the name of a habit or editing or looking at the history of a habit, right? That's all related to one single feature, which is the habits essentially. What you don't want to do is say, build the habit feature where like, okay, hey, build or give me the functionality where I can log a habit. Oh, and also start with the group creation as well. The group creation feature where like you can create groups and invite people, do that as well. Don't do that. That's a massive red flag. Okay, don't do that. Start with one function and just complete that one function at a time. Now, let's say you have started to build your application, and when in the terms of habit buddies, let's say, okay, now you can log multiple habits and you can look at the history, but the app and the agent will probably tell you, where are we storing this information? And that's where you get to the problem or the issue of databases. So there are two main things that you need to consider when building an application for most people anyway, at least for entry level. It's authentication and databases. I'll talk a bit about authentication later on. First, let's talk about databases. Database is essentially where you store information about a user. So if I have certain habits that I want to track, the database will store that information about me, it'll store that information about you, and so on and so forth. And it's the authentication that will allow us to identify which habits are related to which person. The beautiful thing about Replit is that they have their own inbuilt database. And this is one of the reasons why I love using Replit, especially when it comes to building prototypes like this, is that you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is tell the agent, hey, use Replit's inbuilt database. That's it. You don't have to look at anything else. You don't have to touch anything else. You don't have to go to any other application and get some API key. You don't have to do anything. Just tell the agent, hey, use Replit's inbuilt database to manage the information. That's it. It'll automatically do everything by itself. You don't have to do anything. That's the beautiful thing about using Replit. One of the really nice things about using Replit's inbuilt database is that you can just go and see if it's working. So if you just go into a new tab and open up the database, you can see your database and you can see your data. And you can see the different tables, you can see the different data inside of those tables, and it's a really nice way to see if it's working properly, if the tables are correct, and a lot of the times, if you're reading the agent's thoughts, which I highly recommend, by the way, I think it's really important if you want to understand how the agent works and what could possibly be going wrong, read the agent's thinking process, what it's doing or what it thinks it's doing anyway. Because what can happen often is if you're looking into the database, if you're reading its thoughts and whatnot, you might understand if there's an issue, you might understand why it's not working properly. You might say, hey, I noticed in the database, this table is like this, but do you think it's different? And you can then provide context and work with the agent to fix any issues or build any features. So I would highly recommend just going into the database, take a look, see if it's working, what tables are there, confirm with the agent, hey, these are the tables that I found, can you confirm this is correct, and stuff like that. Now, you've got databases sorted. Lovely. All the information is being stored in the right place. Fantastic. How do you go from building an app that has like 1-2 basic features to building a full-fledged application? When you're building your app, it's a very good idea to understand the main functionalities. So in terms of habit buddies, we have habits, we have groups, we have leaderboards, and then we have just like your general settings, which is like changing your username, right? But those are the main features of this application. When you're building the app and when you're prompting the agent, it's really important that you control the context of the message. What do I mean by that? If you are trying to fix an issue or build a feature related to habits, only talk about habits. Never give the agent a task or multiple tasks to do across 3 different or 4 different features. It's always good to keep the context similar. So let's say you have 4 different issues that you need to fix. Try and make sure that they are all related to habits. If they are not related to habits, then only message about habits first and get those done, and then talk about groups, and then talk about leaderboards. Don't combine the issues. The reason being is because, let's say for example, I have a problem in habits, I have a problem in groups, and I have a problem in leaderboards. Because I have a problem across all 3 features, essentially. If I tell the agent, hey, fix all 3 of these issues, the agent first has to go into the code base, find the issue where the habit 1 is happening, read all the files and the code accordingly, then make the edits. Then it's going to go into groups. It's going to have to find where the problem is in the group's code, in the code related to groups, and then it's going to have to figure it out, and then it's going to apply the change and write the new code. And then it's going to go into leaderboards and then do the same thing. What's happening here is that the agent is using multiple tools, right? It's using like 3-4 tools to first search the code and then make the edits in this one, and then the same thing in this one, and now it's used like 8, 10, 12, 15 tools by the time it's gotten to the end. And what this does is this clogs up the context of the agent. Generally speaking, you don't want to do this. So it's always a good idea that when you give the agent a number of different issues to solve, they are all related to the same functionality or feature. So when I built Habit Buddies, anytime I had a number of different issues, I would always group them together based on the feature or functionality they are related to try and keep the context similar. That way, the agent, it can read the code for habits, for example, and then it can fix not only 1, but 2 or 3 issues at the same time because it has that context, right? The other issue with giving issues to fix across all 3 functionalities is that, let's say, for example, you have an issue in habits, an issue in groups, and an issue in leaderboards. It tries to fix the issue in groups, in habits, but it doesn't work. Obviously, the agent doesn't know that, it's just writing code. Now it goes to groups, and it tries to fix the issue in groups, but the issue in groups is related to the issue in the habits functionality. But because the habits functionality isn't working properly, even if the agent writes proper code in this groups feature, the app still won't work properly. So now you're going to be confused. You're going to say, okay, it's telling me the code is working, but it's not. I'm trying the application, there are bugs, there are issues, and that's when people start getting really annoyed when they're trying to vibe code an app. That's when they say, okay, this thing isn't really that good because it's telling me that it's fixing the issue, but it's not. And I keep telling it, hey, this is the issue, but it's not fixing that issue. And that brings me to one of the most important parts of this video, and one of the most important things you'll need to do if you want to actually build an application. And that is testing, working with the agent. Now, a lot of people think that vibe coding means that you simply give the prompt to the agent and it'll go and then build the application. That's not how that works. There is a lot of testing and a lot of relaying information to the agent. Right now, I'm going to show you an example of just that. This is how I built this application. So right now, I actually have a feature in the app that isn't working properly. Right now, as I'm recording this video, if you try and create a habit that you want to track weekly, it's not working. And I have no idea why. And so I'll show you guys. Last night, I was trying to make it work. So I sent this message. I can click a week in the history of a weekly habit, but it doesn't turn green, so it doesn't register that week the habit was completed. And then you try to fix the issue. And then I tried it again. I don't see anything in the console. And I basically just kept going back and forth. And I just told it, don't worry, I'll do the testing. And I just checked what the console said, and I'll show you what that means. And so this is me basically working with the agent to try and fix the issue, right? So I'm going into the application and I'm testing to see if it's working properly. So again, and I'm actively trying to figure out what's happening as well. Quite often, right, what happens is that the agent, obviously it thinks that it knows what's going on, but it doesn't, because really what's happening is when you go into the application itself, the agent doesn't have access to that. So what the agent really is doing is it's building this application blind. And so you have to be the eyes of the AI. You have to go into the application, do the testing, see if the code edits that it has made have actually worked properly. Now, so here is the application on web. It looks funny, I know. Trust me, it looks a lot more, it looks better on phone. And so this is the test that I've been doing, that I've been working on. And so if you go here, and I'll just show you guys edit history. If I click on this, it's not working, right? Why isn't it working? So last night, I actually realized why it wasn't working, and I wanted to share why and how I figured it out in this video, so I can actually show you guys how this works. And so this is what I'm doing now. This is exactly how I built this entire application. It would make the edits, I would go into the application, I would test it. If there was issues, I would tell it, hey, log them in the console. So if you right click, go into inspect, and then go into console here, the agent can write code to basically print here what's happening in the application. So if I click something, it writes down, okay, what actually happened. And this is a really good way to get insight into what's happening in the underlying code if something isn't working properly. So right now, if I click on the previous week, it's not working. See, it's not logging. Why isn't it working? And I finally realized last night, look here, I click on it, and you'll see it says click rejected. It's a future week. Clearly, I'm pressing a previous week, right? This is the current week, August 17th to the 23rd. I'm clicking on something in July or early August, and look, it's not working. And if you look here, it says model click detected on weekly habits block, habit name test, that's correct. And the date is the 7th of September. But the date today, obviously, is not the 7th of September, it's the 16th or 18th of August. So clearly, the dates that are showing in the modal here aren't actually the dates that are being relayed back to the backend in the actual application. So now this is how I have understood, okay, this is the problem. Now, this would have taken probably much longer if I simply just kept telling the agent, hey, figure it out, figure it out, figure it out. And this is why testing from you, the user, is really important. And you need to basically work with the AI. When I said that I built this application in 5 days, what that meant was I worked with the agent doing all the testing basically to make it work. So now I'm going to copy this, and I'll even show you guys how I do it. So here, it was rejected. And so what I'll do is I'll copy this. I'll go back into the agent. I know all of these tabs, by the way. I know which tab is which. And so I'll paste it and I'll say, I noticed that a previous week shown to the user when I click it, the date is actually, God, spelling is awful, in the future. So the dates shown to the user are different to the ones that are sent to the back end. How come? And this is basically how I built the app, going back and forth, testing. One of the best things you can do, and one of the really nice things about this building in a PWA, is that you can basically just test it on the web. So like this is in the web, and you can get it to print things in the console. So if you ever want to get clarity and see, okay, what's actually happening, just tell it to print stuff in the console. So it's printing like everything in the console here. And I'm able to see, okay, look, because of the data being printed in the console, I was able to realize that the date here and the date when I actually click it and that's being sent to the backend is different, and that's why it's not working. Oh God, I hate that. You're absolutely right. The issue is that the modal is displaying weeks for September, but today is August. The problem is in the modal initialization. It's somehow getting set to show September instead of August. Let me restart the workflow first and fix the modal initialization. I see the issue. The current month state is being initialized with a generic new date, which would be getting modified somewhere. The problem is that the modal might be defaulting to showing September instead of the current month. Let me fix this by ensuring the modal always starts with the current month properly. Now I need to also add a reset mechanism when the modal opens to ensure it always shows the current month. Okay, perfect. I fixed the modal initialization issue by the current month state now explicitly initializes to the first day of the current month. Okay, now let's see if that works. Now, okay, here, usually, okay, what would happen in Replit is that you would be working in the development environment. So in Replit, there is a development environment. So if you go here to the preview, yeah. Normally, the app would be running, and it would be running here in the preview, and the changes that the agent makes here would automatically appear in your app in the preview here, and you can click on this button here to open it up into a new tab as well. Now, this isn't working for me because I'm currently, right now, it's only working in the deployed, so the live application. Don't do this. Don't worry about why this is the case for me. That's really silly of me, and I won't be doing this once I release this video. But normally what would happen is when the agent makes the changes, you would automatically see them immediately in the preview, so then you can test it and see what's happening. And again, you can click this button to open it up into a new tab, and you can also click this button to change the screen size so you can see if there are any issues on mobile as compared to the web. So now I will wait for the deployment to complete, and then I will go into the actual live application and test to see if the months are showing properly. I'll close that because you guys don't need to see that. I would really enjoy actually doing a live stream and just showing you guys how I would build an entire application from scratch, maybe one day. Okay, the deployment usually takes a couple minutes, so I will cut this part out probably, and I'll see you guys once it's done. Okay, now the deployment has completed, and I will open up the application, and we'll see if it's working properly. I'll open up the console as well. Let's go into edit history. Let's see if it works. No, rejected. Future week, once again. And it's also always, if you notice, it's the same date every time. Why is it doing that? It's got the current month correct, and it's got the current date correct as well. But for some reason, when it comes to, when you click on it, it's showing, so it's got the weeks correct as well. Look, you'll see here, July 27, August 2nd, July 27, August 2nd, and it's got all the weeks correct as well. But when you actually click it, when you actually click on any of the weeks, it, for some reason, doesn't register. It's always going on to September 7th. So I'll figure this out. And I just wanted to show you guys that this is basically how you test, right? This is a part of it. Now you might be wondering, well, no, I'm not technical, so I don't know how to do these things. This doesn't require any technical knowledge. It does not require any technical knowledge. What you need to be doing is testing your application. If you're not going to test your application, who's going to test it? How are you going to know if it's working properly? So this is something you absolutely need to do, and you need to get comfortable doing. And mind you, the best thing about doing this is how much you will learn, and you will realize very quickly, that once you start doing this, how much faster you'll be able to build. And the whole point of this video is to encourage you to build an application, but so that when you try, the next time you want to do something, you'll be able to do it 2 times faster, right? And so this is all just about learning. And so this testing is really important. This is something that you have to get used to doing, and it's really not that difficult, really. You just go back and forth, you read the agent thoughts. So as I just did, I read all the different things that I just did. Now I'm going to go back to it and tell it, hey, I noticed that the dates are actually the correct, right? It's getting the correct weeks, but every time you click it, the date that it's getting is always September the 7th. Why is that, right? Now we're going to go further into the code and that kind of thing. Well, I'm not going to go into the agent, it's going to go into it. But this is basically what you need to be doing when you're testing, because you have to remember the agent is coding blind, right? Imagine you're trying to build something and you don't even know what the output of what you're building is, right? That's how the agent is building it. So you can't expect it to just get everything right immediately, automatically by itself. So this is really important. You have to be doing this if you want to properly build an application with AI. Now we need to talk about authentication. The beautiful thing about building in Replit is that Replit has inbuilt authentication, which means all you need to do really is tell the Replit agent, hey, implement Replit authentication, and then boom, your app will have Google sign in, Apple sign in, I think GitHub and Twitter sign in. And so it works beautifully and it's really, really simple. There is, however, one thing I need to mention. If you're pushing your app to the iOS App Store, there's a bit more that you need to do to make the authentication work. And there is one issue. Google sign in, as far as I tried, Google sign in didn't work. I couldn't get it to work. So much so that after Replit authentication, Google sign in didn't work. I removed it and tried a completely different authentication provider. So I tried Clerk, and if you use Habit Buddies right now, you'll notice that it's using Clerk, but I still couldn't get Google sign in to work. I just left it with Clerk, but I couldn't get Google sign in to work with the PWA. Maybe it's an issue with the PWA specifically, but the only thing that I could get to work was the email and password sign in, as well as the Apple sign in. There is something that you'll need to do later on to make the authentication work and make the application work, and I'll mention that in the section where I talk about pushing the actual application to the iOS App Store. One thing you need to remember to do is to make sure that you remind the agent that although it's building a web app, the idea is that this is going to be used for mobile. And so that you need to remind the AI that, one, to optimize and configure the application as a PWA, as a progressive web application. That's the type of mobile app that we're building. And to just remind it to make sure that, hey, make sure that it works really well for mobile, because that's more important. That's at least what I did, because again, I didn't care if the app looked funny on web, because it's only meant to be used for mobile. So that's just one thing that you need to remember to do, to let the agent know to configure the application and to optimize the application as a PWA for mobile use. One of the really cool things about building a PWA is that you don't need to push it to the App Store to use it as an app. What I mean by that is, if you open up your website on your browser on your phone, so like on Chrome or Safari, you can from there add it to your home screen, and then your app will have an icon on your home screen on your phone, and it'll open up as a normal mobile application. And that way you can use it as an app without having to push it onto the App Store and download it. This is obviously really good if you are just using it by yourself. You don't need to push it to the App Store and people don't need to download it. And it's just a really cool way for you to build an app for yourself and then put it onto your phone and use it that way. So to recap all the points that I've mentioned, number one, your first prompt is very important. Make sure you give some context about your application, but then you remind the agent to start with the most basic, bare bones functionality. Remember, this is the foundation of your app, and you don't want to get started with issues and bugs. Number two, build one thing at a time. Remember, just build one thing at a time. One feature, one functionality, make sure it works, and then move on. Number three, keep the context the same. When you're building applications, make sure that your prompts aren't involving multiple things at a time that are unrelated. Keep the context the same. Number four, use Replit's inbuilt database. It's really simple, it's very easy to use. Just tell the agent, hey, use Replit's inbuilt database. Number five, check the database yourself. This is really important. Verify what the agent is doing with the database. Make sure the information is actually being stored there and it's looking correct. Number six, read the agent's thoughts or thought process. It's really important. It will help you understand how the agent works, what it's doing, what it thinks are the problems, and how it's building actual features in your application. Number seven, when building the application, going from features to full app, make sure you understand the main features of your application and then control the context of your prompts. Remember, feature by feature, try and not mix the different features in your prompts. Number eight, test, test, and test. You have to be testing. Someone's got to do it. Remember, the agent is building blind. It can't see the changes it's making to the application. That means you need to go into the app and actually test to see what's happening. Remember, use the console log, the one that I mentioned in the testing part. Use it. See how the data is being manipulated. What data is showing on the front end to you, the user, and how is it being sent back to the back end? You have to be building with the agent. Vibe coding doesn't mean the agent is going to do everything. You have to be involved and you have to get comfortable testing your application. Number 9, use Replit's inbuilt authentication. It's very simple, just like the database. Just tell the agent to use Replit's inbuilt authentication. But remember, if you're pushing to the App Store, there's a good chance the Google sign-in won't work. At least I wasn't able to make it work. Number 10, configure the application to be optimized for mobile and PWA use. Just remind the agent, hey, this is a PWA, or it's going to be a PWA, optimized for mobile. And finally, number 11 is to remember that you don't have to push your PWA to the App Store. If you simply want to use it by yourself or just a handful of people, you can just open up the website on your phone, add it to your home screen, and use it as an application. So you finally built your grand application and it's ready to be distributed to the world and for people to start downloading and using it. How do you push it onto the App Store? This is how. So you've built your app and now you want to push it to the App Store. This is where you're going to go, to pwabuilder.com. Here you're going to paste in your URL. So I'll paste in Habit Buddies, press start, and now it's going to analyze the website and it's going to specifically look at the manifest.json file, see what's happening in the app, and so on. Now, under action items, there are going to be a number of different things that they'll give you advice on. When I first built my app, I had about, so you can see my score right now is 28 out of 30. I had a score of about 2 out of 30, and I had like 30 different action items. So what I did was I basically copied all of them, put them into the Replit agent, and asked it, okay, which ones are the easiest to fix and which ones can we implement that would make the app really good. And that way I got it down to 28 out of 30. But you don't have to implement everything. So again, some of these are just like advice generally, so you don't have to like try and make sure that this is perfect, but you want to get as high as possible. Once you've done this, you click on this button here, package for stores. Here you have the option to download the package for different stores. So there's Windows, Android, MetaQuest, and iOS. I went with iOS because I wanted to put this onto the iOS App Store because I have an iPhone. So I will click generate package. From here, it'll generate your bundle ID, name, and URL. This doesn't really matter too much. You can basically have that as whatever. Generally speaking, the bundle ID is like your the last part dot the first part, so it's app dot. Technically, it should be xyz.habitbuddies, but I had a different bundle ID before, so whatever. But these don't really matter that much. Now, there is one important thing that you need to do here. You can do it later as well, but I'll just show you guys, and that is if you click on all settings and scroll down to the bottom, it's here, permitted URLs. This is to make sure that the authentication works properly. To allow your users to sign up and sign in your PWA, they need to be able to basically go through the authentication, and the authentication can only work if it redirects to other URLs. So that's like Replit URLs, or in my case, Clerk URLs. So you need to make sure that those URLs, you've put them in this permitted URLs box here. This is really important. It doesn't matter if you forget to put something here because you can edit it later on, and I'll show you how that works as well. So once you've done this, click on download package. It'll download the iOS basically package for your application. I'll click on that, and I'll open. So I'm here. So now it has. So it's a zip folder. It unzips it. Now what you want to do is click on this next step, so HTML, and this file actually has all of the instructions you need to go from what you have right now to putting the app onto the App Store. Like, they literally have very detailed instructions, as you can see, literally and this is exactly what I copied to go from now to putting the app onto the App Store. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but I will give you some hints, some new things that I learned. Number one, so once you're in this folder, you need to get into this folder. So let me just go CD downloads. So you open up the terminal. So you have to open up the terminal. So if you click on so if you're on Mac, so it's command space terminal. This is just another nicer looking terminal, but it doesn't really matter. And you go to downloads, and then I will go to, what's it called? Habit Buddies 6. Oh no, I'm not sure how to do the, okay, Habit Buddies 6. Okay, cool. Now I have the terminal in this folder. Now you need to go into the source folder. So I'll do cd source like this. Now I'm in the source folder. And so you'll see here, if I open up the source folder, it's got all these little things. And if I do ls here, you can see it's the exact same. So I'm in the source folder. From the source folder, over here in the instructions, it tells you to run pod install. Now, anytime I tried doing this, it didn't actually work. Well, not exactly. First, what I had to do, I had to run pod repo update. So, or actually no, sorry, before that, I actually had to install this. So I did brew install Cocoa Pods. I've already done that, so this should already work. Once you've done that, then do pod repo update. So I'll do that, and I'll show you guys pod repo update. Once that completes, then you do pod update. So you do pod update, copy that. That's done. So now we'll do pod update. And then once that's done, that's when you run pod install. So you can see here, it's updating the local specs and it's downloading all the dependencies for this project, for this application. Oh, one thing to remember as well is that if you're on Mac, which I am, you'll need Xcode. So you have to make sure that you've got Xcode downloaded. Okay, now that pod update has ran, now we run pod install. Pod install has worked. And now if I go to the source folder, you will see two files. And it says it here, open the XC workspace. Don't open the Xcode project workspace. Xcode project file. So we've got Xcode project, XC workspace. This is the file you want to open. So I'll double click this and it will then open in Xcode. Trust and open. And now we are in Xcode. We have the application in Xcode. What you want to do first is you want to go here to Habit Buddies. So what this thing tells you is to go on product. Before you, don't worry about clicking this, go on to product and then select build. So we'll do that. We'll build the application. Build failed. Wow, why did it fail? That was really fast. Okay, signing for Habit Buddies requires a development team. So now this is important. You need to have a developer account. I have a developer account, so you'll need to basically pay for the developer account with your Apple ID, I believe. So here I'll click on me, and now if I click on product and build, it should work because this account, which is my account, is a developer account. And that should work. And it will then build the application. Fantastic. Once that's done, you literally just copy or you just follow along with the instructions on this page. Remember this page is in the downloaded folder that you got when you downloaded your package. It's the next steps. It's the next steps HTML file. You just go along. It's got extremely detailed instructions on how to go from here to pushing onto the actual app store. And then you'll be good to go. You'll be good to go. Oh, one thing to remember, and I will quickly mention, is here. Okay. You might have problems with authentication. Because what will happen is the app will try and redirect to certain URLs, and that's not allowed as a PWA. And so this is one of the bad things, I guess. One of the negatives of building a PWA is that if you look here, there are a number of different URLs. These are the same URLs that I put in in the permitted URLs. So the permitted URLs, they're actually here. So if you go into info, they're here under the WK app bound domains. Now, this is basically where you put domains that you want the application to be allowed to redirect to. And the main ones that I've put here are for authentication, basically. Some final thoughts on Habit Buddies and this project overall. Habit Buddies is a relatively simple application. There isn't much going on. You can sign up and sign in and create habits, create groups, and there are leaderboards. There really isn't much else going on. You don't have to call APIs, you don't have to call an LLM. There isn't much happening, and so it's a relatively simple application. But that doesn't mean the advice that I've given here only applies to simple applications. If I was to build any kind of application using AI, all of the advice applies. That's number one. Number two, some people might say, this isn't exactly a mobile application. It's a PWA. It's a website that just works really well on mobile. And you're right, that's technically correct. But you have to consider, do you need a mobile application, like a native or a hybrid app? Could you just use a PWA? The reality is that a lot of people, if they want to build a relatively simple application, a PWA can go a very long way. That's number one. And number two, you learn a lot by building a PWA about just building stuff generally. And so if you're not technical, I would recommend starting off with this because it's just a nice, simple thing to start off on. You get used to building things, you understand how the agent works, and then you can move on to building more complex applications. One of the really nice things about building a PWA that I only realized afterwards somehow is that updating the application doesn't require you to go into the iOS App Store and then update your app. All you need to do is update your website, really. Because your mobile application points to your website, if you just update your website, your app on your phone also gets updated. So that's a really nice thing. Now, let's say you're stubborn and you don't want to build a PWA, or you've already built one, and now you want to build an actual native or hybrid application. Now, I'm not particularly interested in building native applications because I don't want to build the same app in two different code bases, but I do want to learn how to build hybrid applications. In fact, I have already started learning. I've rebuilt Habit Buddies in its entirety with all the functionality as a hybrid application, and it took me about 2 days. I'll make a separate video talking about how I did that, what I used, and how you can build hybrid applications rather quickly. I'll talk about that in a different video. And so that's my advice on how to build production applications with AI. I hope you've found this video insightful and useful. Feel free to come back and reference different things. I'm assuming this video is actually really long and it's got a lot of information, but I hope this has shed some light on how somebody would go from idea to actual application in the App Store in a relatively short amount of time. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'd be more than happy to provide any advice or answer any questions, and I'd love to hear what kind of applications people might want to build. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been an insightful video, and I'm looking forward to making more videos like this in the future. Take care, and I'll see you next time.